Marcus Thompson sat on the cold concrete steps outside the tall glass building. His old guitar case was open in front of him, with just a few coins inside. People in expensive suits walked past him every day. They talked loudly on their phones about millions of dollars. They did not look at him. To them, he was invisible. The building was called Meridian Financial Group. It was one of the biggest money companies in the city. Marcus knew this building well. He used to work in a place just like it. He used to wear those same expensive suits. He used to carry a briefcase worth more than most people made in a month, but that was 3 years ago. Now he wore old clothes that did not fit right. His hair was long and messy. His shoes had holes in them. When people saw him, they thought he was just another homeless man who did not matter. A woman in a red dress walked by. She was talking on her phone about buying a new car. "Just get the BMW," she said. "Money is not a problem." She dropped a quarter in his guitar case without looking at him. Marcus watched her walk away. He remembered when he used to give advice about buying cars. He used to tell rich people how to spend their money. Marcus picked up the quarter and put it in his pocket. 25 cents. He needed $50 just to eat today. The math was simple. He needed 200 more quarters. But most people did not give him anything at all. A group of young men in suits came out of the building. They were laughing and talking about their lunch plans. "Let's go to that new place downtown," one said. "The one where dinner cost $200. They walked around Marcus like he was a piece of furniture. One of them almost stepped on his hand. Marcus remembered when he was like them, young, confident, full of dreams. He had started working at Preston and Associates when he was 25. He was good with numbers, really good. He could look at a company and tell you if it would make money or lose money. Big companies paid him lots of money for his advice. His first big success was with a tech company called Dataflow. Everyone said it would fail. Marcus studied their business plan for weeks. He looked at their numbers, their team, their market. He told his boss to invest $2 million. Everyone thought he was crazy. 6 months later, Dataflow was worth $50 million. Marcus became famous in the financial world. After that, everyone wanted his advice. He worked with billionaires and politicians. He had meetings in fancy restaurants. He flew to other countries for business. His apartment was on the top floor of a luxury building. He had everything he wanted, but Marcus also had a family. His wife Sarah was a teacher. His daughter Emma was 8 years old and loved to draw pictures. They were his whole world. When he was not working, he spent time with them. They would go to the park on weekends. Emma would show him her drawings. Sarah would make dinner and they would talk about their day. Then everything changed. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was driving Emma to school. A drunk driver ran a red light. The accident happened so fast. Sarah died at the hospital that afternoon. Emma lived for 3 more days before the doctors said there was nothing more they could do. Marcus stopped working. He could not think about money or investments. He could not get out of bed. The grief was like a heavy weight on his chest. He would stare at Emma's drawings on the refrigerator and cry. He would smell Sarah's perfume on her clothes and feel lost. His boss was understanding at first. "Take all the time you need," he said. But weeks turned into months. Marcus missed important meetings. He lost big clients. Other people started doing his job. After 6 months, they had to let him go. Without his job, Marcus could not pay for his expensive apartment. He had some savings, but not enough. He had to move to a smaller place, then an even smaller place. He started drinking to numb the pain. He stopped taking care of himself. He stopped caring about anything. The final blow came when Marcus tried to start his own business. He used all his remaining money to create a new investment company. He was sure he could make it work. But the market crashed at the worst possible time. Companies he thought were safe lost all their value. His new business failed in 3 months. He lost everything. With no money and no home, Marcus ended up on the streets. The first night was the hardest. He slept in his car until it got taken away because he could not make the payments. Then he slept in parks and under bridges. He learned which restaurants threw away good food. He learned which libraries let him stay inside when it was cold. Now sitting outside Meridian Financial Group, Marcus watched the same type of people he used to be. They were making the same mistakes he used to see every day. They thought they were smart. They thought they were safe. They did not know how quickly everything could change. A security guard came out of the building. His name was Roberto, and he was nicer than most people. "How are you doing today, Marcus?" he asked. "Same as always," Marcus replied. Roberto was one of the few people who talked to him like he was human. "You know," Roberto said, "I heard some of those guys talking upstairs. They're having problems with their investments. Something about the Asian markets. They don't know what to do." Marcus almost smiled. He could solve their problem in 5 minutes. The Asian markets were behaving exactly like the European markets did in 2008, but they would never ask a homeless man for advice. "Well, maybe they'll figure it out," Marcus said. Roberto nodded and went back inside. Marcus looked at his guitar case. Still just a few coins. The afternoon was getting colder. Soon the business people would go home to their warm houses and families. Marcus would find a place to sleep that was not too cold or dangerous. But something was different today. As Marcus sat there, he started thinking about numbers again. For the first time in 3 years, his mind was working like it used to. He was seeing patterns in the market. He was understanding things that the people in the building could not see. Maybe Roberto was right. Maybe those smart business people were not so smart after all. They had never been homeless. They had never lost everything. They did not know what real risk looked like. Marcus closed his eyes and let his mind work. The Asian markets, the European debt crisis, the American housing market, it was all connected. He could see the whole picture. And he could see what was coming next. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt something other than sadness. He felt the excitement of solving a puzzle. His brain was still good. His skills were still there. They were just hidden under years of grief and loss. As the sun started to set, Marcus packed up his guitar case. He had made $3.47 today. Not much, but enough for dinner. More importantly, he had remembered who he used to be, and maybe, just maybe, who he could be again. Victoria Ashford stood in her office on the 40th floor of the Ashford Tower. She was looking out at the city below. From up there, people looked like tiny ants walking around. Victoria was one of the richest women in the world. Her family had made billions of dollars in real estate and technology. But Victoria was different from other rich people. She cared about helping others. Every year she held a big charity event called Voices of Change. The event raised money to help poor people, homeless people, and families who needed help. This year, Victoria wanted to do something new. She was tired of the same old charity events where rich people gave money and felt good about themselves. She wanted real change. She wanted people to understand what it was like to be poor or homeless. Victoria called her assistant Jennifer into the office. Jennifer was young and smart, but she did not always understand Victoria's ideas. "Jennifer," Victoria said, "I want this year's gala to be different. I want real people to speak. People who have lived through hard times. People who can teach us something." Jennifer wrote notes on her tablet. "What do you mean by real people, Ms. Ashford?" "I mean people who are not like us," Victoria explained. "People who have been homeless. People who have struggled. People who know what it's really like to need help." Jennifer looked confused. "But Ms. Ashford, the guests expect a certain kind of event. They want to see famous speakers and performers. They might not want to hear from those kinds of people." Victoria turned away from the window. Her eyes were serious. "That's exactly the problem, Jennifer. We live in our own world. We give money, but we don't really understand the problems we're trying to solve. So what do you want me to do?" Jennifer asked. "I want you to put out an open invitation," Victoria said. "Anyone can try out to speak at the gala. Anyone at all. Rich or poor, famous or unknown. The best speakers will get to perform at the main event." Jennifer was worried. She knew the other rich people would not like this idea, but Victoria was her boss. "Okay," she said. "I'll set up auditions. But are you sure about this?" "I'm sure," Victoria said. "And Jennifer, make sure the invitation reaches everyone. Not just the usual people. I want people from shelters, from community centers, from the streets. Real voices of change." After Jennifer left, Victoria sat at her desk. She thought about her own life. She had been born rich. She had never been hungry or homeless. She had never worried about paying rent or buying food. Sometimes she wondered if she really understood the problem she was trying to solve. Jennifer went back to her office and started working. She created a flyer about the auditions. It said, "Voices of Change auditions open to everyone. Share your story. Make a difference. No experience required. But Jennifer had a problem. She did not know how to reach homeless people or poor people. She only knew how to contact famous speakers and performers. So she called her friend David, who worked for the city's social services department. "David," she said, "my boss wants me to invite homeless people to audition for a charity event. How do I do that?" David laughed. "That's different. Most charity events just want to raise money, not actually include homeless people. Are you serious about this?" "My boss is serious," Jennifer said. "She wants real people with real stories." "Okay," David said. "I'll help you. I work with shelters and community centers all over the city. I can get your flyers to the right places." David was excited about the idea. He had worked with homeless people for 10 years. He knew many of them had amazing stories. Some were very smart. Some had been successful before they became homeless, but nobody ever listened to them. David took the flyers to every shelter in the city. He put them up at food banks and community centers. He gave them to social workers and volunteers. The flyer looked strange in these places. Most of the signs were about getting food or finding a place to sleep. This one was about speaking to rich people. One of the places David visited was the downtown community center. This was where Marcus Thompson came every Tuesday to use the computers. Marcus was trying to learn about new computer programs. He thought maybe he could find work doing something with numbers. When Marcus saw the flyer, he almost walked away. He did not want to be part of some rich person's charity show, but something made him stop and read it again. "Share your story," it said. "Make a difference." Marcus thought about his story. 3 years of being homeless. 3 years of being invisible. 3 years of watching rich people make the same mistakes over and over again. Maybe he did have something to say. The social worker at the center was a woman named Linda. She had known Marcus for 2 years. She knew he was different from most homeless people. He was smart and educated, but he had given up on himself. "You should try out," Linda said to Marcus. "You have a lot to offer." Marcus shook his head. "They don't want to hear from people like me. They just want to feel good about themselves." "Maybe," Linda said. "But what if you're wrong? What if this is your chance to make things better?" Marcus took a flyer and put it in his pocket. He did not think about it much for the rest of the day. But that night, when he was trying to sleep in the shelter, he kept thinking about it. He thought about all the business people he saw every day. They walked past him like he did not exist. They made decisions about money and markets, but they did not understand real problems. They did not know what it was like to choose between food and a warm place to sleep. What if he could tell them? What if he could make them understand? What if he could use his old skills to help people like him? The next morning, Marcus went back to the community center. He asked Linda about the auditions. "They're next week," she said. "You just have to show up and tell your story. 5 minutes. That's all." "What would I say?" Marcus asked. "Tell them the truth," Linda said. "Tell them what it's really like. Tell them how smart you are. Tell them what you know." Marcus was scared. He had not spoken to business people in 3 years. He did not have nice clothes. He did not have a home address or a phone number. What would they think of him? But he was also angry. Angry at being invisible. Angry at being ignored. Angry at watching people make bad decisions when he could help them make better ones. That afternoon, Marcus sat outside the Meridian Financial Group building like he did every day. But this time, he was not just asking for money. He was listening to the conversations around him. He was paying attention to the business problems people were discussing. A group of executives came out talking about their company's stock price. "We're down 15% this month," one said. "We don't know what's happening." Marcus knew exactly what was happening. He had been following their company in the news. They were making the same mistakes that companies made in 2008. But they would never ask him for advice. Another group was talking about investing in a new tech company. "It looks good on paper," one said. "But something feels wrong about it." Marcus wanted to tell them to look at the company's debt ratio. He wanted to explain why their instincts were right. But he was just a homeless man sitting on the steps. As the day went on, Marcus made a decision. He would go to the auditions. He would tell his story. But he would also tell them something else. He would tell them the truth about business and money. He would show them that being homeless did not make him stupid. That night, Marcus started preparing. He went to the public library and used the free computers. He researched Victoria Ashford and her company. He learned about the charity gala and the people who would be there. He also started writing down his ideas. Ideas about economics and business. Ideas about helping poor people and homeless people. Ideas that could make money for rich people while also making life better for everyone else. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt hope. Maybe this was his chance. Maybe this was how he could stop being invisible. Maybe this was how he could use his talents to help others like him. The auditions were in 5 days. Marcus had 5 days to prepare, 5 days to find his voice again, 5 days to get ready to face the world that had forgotten him. As he worked on his speech that night, Marcus remembered something his daughter Emma used to say. She would draw pictures of superheroes and say, "Daddy, everyone has a superpower. They just have to find it." Maybe Marcus's superpower was still there, hidden under 3 years of grief and loss. Maybe it was time to find it again. Marcus woke up before sunrise on Monday morning. The shelter was still dark and quiet. Other people were sleeping on cots around him. Some were snoring. Some were talking in their sleep. Marcus had been living in shelters for 2 years now. He knew all the sounds, but today was different. Today he had a purpose. The audition was in 4 days and he had work to do. Marcus packed his few belongings into his old backpack. He had 2 shirts, 1 pair of pants, some underwear, and a notebook where he wrote down his thoughts. He also had the flyer about the auditions. He had read it so many times that it was getting worn out. The first place Marcus went was the public library. It opened at 9 in the morning. Marcus was always one of the first people there. The librarians knew him. They were kind to him even though he was homeless. "Good morning, Marcus," said Mrs. Chen, the head librarian. "Here for your usual computer time?" "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. "But today I need to do some research." Marcus went to his favorite computer in the back corner. It was quiet there and he could think. He started by looking up information about Victoria Ashford. He wanted to understand who she was and what she cared about. Victoria Ashford was 42 years old. Her family owned Ashford Industries, which built shopping centers and office buildings all over the world. But Victoria was not just interested in making money. She had started a foundation that helped homeless people, poor families, and children who needed education. Marcus read about her charity work. She had given millions of dollars to build homeless shelters. She had started programs to help people find jobs. She had paid for thousands of children to go to college. Victoria seemed to really care about helping people. But Marcus also noticed something else. Most of her charity work was about giving money to programs. She did not spend time with homeless people. She did not talk to them directly. She helped them, but she did not know them. Next, Marcus researched the people who would be at the charity gala. These were some of the richest and most powerful people in the country. CEOs of big companies, politicians, movie stars, and tech billionaires. Marcus recognized many of the names. Some of these people he had worked with before he became homeless. James Morrison was a venture capitalist who invested in new companies. Marcus had given him advice about a tech company 5 years ago. James had made $50 million from that advice. But James would not recognize Marcus now. Sarah Chen was another name on the list. She was the CEO of a big tech company. Marcus had analyzed her company's financial reports when he was still working. He had predicted that her company would be very successful. He was right. Sarah Chen was now worth $3 billion. As Marcus read about these people, he started to understand something. They were all very good at making money. But they were not good at understanding regular people's problems. They lived in a world of expensive restaurants, private jets, and luxury homes. They had never been hungry or homeless or afraid. Marcus spent the whole morning taking notes. He wrote down the names of important people. He wrote down facts about their companies. He wrote down their business successes and failures. His old skills were coming back. He was starting to think like a financial analyst again. After lunch, Marcus went to a different part of the library. He found books about public speaking and presentations. He had given many presentations when he was working, but that was 3 years ago. He needed to remember how to speak to important people. One book was called Speaking with Confidence. It had tips about how to stand, how to use your voice, and how to connect with your audience. Marcus read the whole book in 2 hours. He took notes about the most important points. Another book was about telling stories. It said that people remember stories better than facts. Marcus thought about his own story. It was sad, but it was also important. Maybe his story could help people understand what it was really like to be homeless. That evening, Marcus went to an abandoned building where he sometimes slept when the shelters were full. It was quiet there, and he could practice his speech without anyone hearing him. Marcus stood in the empty room and pretended there were important people sitting in front of him. He started talking about his life before he became homeless. He talked about his wife and daughter. He talked about his successful career. His voice was shaky at first, but it got stronger as he talked. Then he talked about losing his family. He talked about the grief and sadness that made him stop caring about everything. He talked about losing his job and his home. His voice cracked when he talked about the first night he slept outside. Finally, Marcus talked about what he had learned from being homeless. He talked about the business people he saw every day, who did not understand real problems. He talked about the economic policies that helped rich people but hurt poor people. He talked about solutions that could help everyone. As Marcus practiced, he realized something important. His story was not just about being sad. It was about being smart and capable, even when the world treated him like he was worthless. His story was about having valuable knowledge that people needed to hear. The next day, Marcus went back to the library. This time he researched current economic problems. He looked at news articles about unemployment, housing costs, and poverty. He studied government reports about homelessness. He analyzed data about income inequality. Marcus's brain was working better than it had in years. He could see patterns in the numbers. He could understand complicated economic relationships. He could predict what would happen if certain policies were implemented. He started writing down his ideas. Not just ideas about helping homeless people, but ideas about fixing the whole economic system. Ideas that could make money for investors while also helping poor people. Ideas that rich people would actually want to implement because they would benefit too. Marcus worked on his speech for hours. He wrote it out by hand in his notebook. He crossed out words and rewrote sentences. He timed himself to make sure it was not too long. The audition was only 5 minutes, so every word had to count. On Wednesday, Marcus did something he had not done in 3 years. He went to a thrift store and bought better clothes. He found a white shirt that was almost new and a tie that was not too worn out. His pants were still old, but they were clean. He wanted to look as professional as possible. The clothes cost him $12. That was almost all the money he had collected from asking for donations that week. But Marcus knew it was important. First impressions mattered, especially when talking to rich people. That evening, Marcus practiced his speech again in the abandoned building. This time, he wore his new clothes and stood up straight like he used to when he gave presentations to important clients. He looked at imaginary faces in the audience and spoke clearly and confidently. "My name is Marcus Thompson," he began. 3 years ago, I was a successful financial analyst. I managed investments worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I advised some of the richest people in this city. Today I am homeless, but I am still that same analyst. I still have the same knowledge. I still understand how money and markets work. The only difference is that now I also understand what it feels like to have nothing. Marcus continued his speech, talking about the economic problems he saw every day. He talked about policies that sounded good but did not actually help poor people. He talked about investment opportunities that rich people were missing because they did not understand the needs of regular people. As he practiced, Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. He felt confident. He felt smart. He felt like he had something important to say. The grief and sadness were still there, but they were not controlling him anymore. On Thursday night, Marcus could not sleep. The audition was the next day. He kept going over his speech in his mind. He kept thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. What if they laughed at him? What if they called security to remove him? What if he forgot what to say? But Marcus also thought about all the ways it could go right. What if they listened to him? What if they realized that he was smart and capable? What if they gave him a chance to make a difference? The other homeless people at the shelter thought Marcus was crazy. "Rich people don't care about us," said Tom, an older man who had been homeless for 10 years. "They just want to feel good about themselves by giving money to charity." "You're wasting your time," said Maria, a woman who had lost her home when she got sick and could not work. "They'll just look at you and see a homeless person. They won't listen to anything you say." But Marcus disagreed. "Maybe you're right," he said. "But maybe you're wrong. Maybe this is my chance to show them that homeless people are not stupid or lazy. Maybe this is my chance to help all of us." That night, Marcus lay on his cot and thought about his daughter, Emma. She used to draw pictures of superheroes saving the world. "Everyone can be a hero, Daddy," she would say. "You just have to be brave." Tomorrow, Marcus would find out if he could be brave enough to be a hero. Tomorrow, he would face the world that had forgotten him and try to make them remember that he was still there. Still smart. Still valuable. Tomorrow, Marcus would get his chance to stop being invisible. Marcus woke up at 5 in the morning on Friday. The audition was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but he could not sleep anymore. His heart was beating fast. Today was the day that could change everything. The audition was being held at the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown. Marcus had walked past this hotel many times when he was homeless, but he had never been inside. It was the kind of place where rich people stayed when they visited the city. The lobby had marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Marcus had seen the doorman turn away homeless people who tried to come inside to get warm. Marcus spent the morning at the library, reading his speech one more time. He had memorized every word, but he wanted to be sure. He also used the library's bathroom to clean up as much as possible. He brushed his teeth and washed his face. He combed his hair with his fingers. He put on his thrift store clothes and tried to look professional. At noon, Marcus started walking toward the hotel. It was a 20-minute walk from the library. As he walked, he saw other homeless people on the streets. Some were asking for money. Some were sleeping in doorways. Some were pushing shopping carts full of their belongings. Marcus thought about how different his life was about to be. In 2 hours, he might be talking to some of the richest people in the world. Or he might be back on the streets, rejected and forgotten again. When Marcus arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel, he stopped outside and looked up at the tall building. The doorman was wearing a fancy uniform with gold buttons. Rich people were walking in and out of the hotel with expensive luggage and designer clothes. Marcus took a deep breath and walked toward the door. The doorman looked at him suspiciously. Marcus's clothes were clean but old. His shoes were worn out. He did not look like the kind of person who belonged in this hotel. "Can I help you?" the doorman asked. His voice was not friendly. "I'm here for the Voices of Change auditions," Marcus said. He tried to sound confident. The doorman looked confused. He picked up a phone and called someone inside. After a minute, he hung up. "Go to the conference room on the 3rd floor," he said. He still did not look happy about letting Marcus inside. The hotel lobby was even fancier than Marcus had imagined. The ceiling was 3 stories high. There were paintings on the walls that probably cost more than most people made in a year. People in expensive clothes were sitting on leather couches drinking coffee and talking quietly. Marcus felt out of place, but he also felt determined. He had just as much right to be here as anyone else. He had something important to say. Marcus took the elevator to the 3rd floor. When the doors opened, he saw a sign that said, "Voices of Change auditions, Conference Room 3A. There was a line of people waiting outside the room. Some looked like professional speakers. Others looked like regular people with stories to tell. Marcus joined the line and looked around. There were about 30 people waiting. Some were well-dressed and confident. They looked like they were used to speaking to important audiences. Others looked nervous and unsure like Marcus felt. In front of Marcus was a young woman who kept checking her phone. She was wearing a business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Behind him was an older man who was shaking slightly. Marcus could tell the man was nervous too. "First time doing something like this?" the older man asked Marcus. "Yes," Marcus said. "You?" "I've never spoken to rich people before," the man said. "I used to be a factory worker. Lost my job when the plant closed down. Been unemployed for 2 years now. I'm hoping they'll listen to what us regular people have to go through." Marcus nodded. He understood what the man meant. Rich people made decisions that affected regular people's lives, but they did not always understand what those decisions really meant. The line moved slowly. Every 15 minutes, someone would go into the conference room for their audition. Some people came out looking happy. Others came out looking disappointed. When there were only 5 people ahead of him, Marcus started to feel very nervous. His hands were sweating. His mouth was dry. He kept going over his speech in his mind, making sure he remembered every word. Finally, it was Marcus's turn. A young woman with a clipboard called his name. "Marcus Thompson." "That's me," Marcus said. His voice sounded quieter than he wanted it to. "Right this way," the woman said. She led him to the door of the conference room. Marcus walked into the room and stopped. There was a long table with 5 people sitting behind it. He recognized one of them immediately. It was Victoria Ashford herself. She was smaller than he had expected, but she had intelligent eyes and an expensive business suit. Next to Victoria was a man in his 50s wearing glasses. Marcus remembered seeing his picture in business magazines. His name was Richard Preston, and he owned several television stations. There was also a younger woman who looked like she might work for Victoria, and 2 other men who Marcus did not recognize. At the front of the room was a small stage with a microphone. There were chairs set up like an audience, but they were empty now. Marcus realized that if he made it through the audition, he would be speaking to hundreds of rich and powerful people in those chairs. "Please, have a seat," Victoria said. She pointed to a chair in front of the table. Marcus sat down and looked at the 5 judges. They were all staring at him, waiting for him to speak. He could tell they were trying to figure out who he was and why he was there. "Tell us your name and a little bit about yourself," Victoria said. Her voice was kind but professional. "My name is Marcus Thompson," he began. His voice was stronger now. "I am 41 years old. I used to be a financial analyst and now I am homeless." The judges looked surprised. Marcus could see them exchange glances with each other. This was probably not what they were expecting to hear. "Go on," Victoria said. She leaned forward, looking more interested. Marcus stood up and walked to the microphone on the small stage. This felt more natural to him. He had given hundreds of presentations from stages like this one. 3 years ago, I was managing investment portfolios worth over $200 million. Marcus continued. I advised wealthy clients on how to grow their money. I was good at my job, very good. I helped my clients make millions of dollars in profit. The judges were paying attention now. Richard Preston was taking notes. The younger woman was looking at Marcus with curiosity instead of suspicion. "Then I lost my wife and daughter in a car accident," Marcus said. "The grief was so overwhelming that I could not work anymore. I lost my job, my home, and eventually everything I owned. For the past 3 years, I have been living on the streets and in homeless shelters." Marcus paused and looked at each judge. He could see sympathy in their eyes, but also discomfort. Rich people did not like to think about how quickly life could change. "But here's what I want you to understand," Marcus continued. "Being homeless did not make me stupid. It did not erase my education or my experience. I still understand economics and business and finance. The only difference is that now I also understand what it feels like to have nothing." Victoria was nodding slowly. She seemed to understand what Marcus was trying to say. "Every day I sit outside office buildings and listen to business people talking about investments and profits," Marcus said. "I watch them make decisions that affect millions of poor people, but they have never been poor themselves. They create policies to help the homeless, but they have never talked to a homeless person." Marcus felt his confidence growing. This was what he was good at, explaining complex ideas in simple terms, making people understand things they had never thought about before. "I have spent 3 years learning about poverty from the inside," Marcus continued. "I know which government programs actually work and which ones just waste money. I know what poor people really need and what they don't need. I understand the economy from both the top and the bottom." The judges were all leaning forward now. Even the 2 men Marcus did not recognize were paying close attention. "I am not here to ask for pity or charity," Marcus said. "I am here to offer you something valuable. I am here to share knowledge that you cannot get from books or reports or studies. I am here to tell you the truth about poverty and homelessness from someone who has lived it." Marcus looked directly at Victoria. "You want to hear voices of change? I am a voice of change. I am someone who has been on both sides of the economic divide. I can help you understand problems you are trying to solve but have never experienced yourself." The room was completely quiet. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. He had said everything he wanted to say, but he felt like he could talk for hours more. "That's very interesting, Mr. Thompson," Victoria said finally. "Can you give us a specific example of what you mean?" Marcus smiled. This was the question he had been hoping for. "Last month, your foundation announced a new program to help homeless people find jobs," Marcus said. "The program requires people to have a permanent address before they can apply for job training. But here's the problem. Most homeless people cannot get a permanent address without a job, and they cannot get a job without job training. Your program sounds good, but it does not actually help the people who need it most." Victoria looked surprised. "How do you know about that program?" "I read about it in the newspaper," Marcus said. I also tried to apply for it, but I was told I could not participate because I do not have a home address. Marcus did not sleep well for the next 5 days. Every morning, he woke up wondering if today would be the day he heard back from Victoria Ashford's people. The audition had gone better than he had hoped, but he tried not to get his hopes up too high. Rich people made a lot of promises they did not keep. On Wednesday morning, Marcus was sitting outside the Meridian Financial Group building like he did every day. His guitar case was open, and he was watching the business people walk by. But something was different today. Instead of just watching them, Marcus was listening more carefully to their conversations. A group of executives came out of the building, talking loudly about a problem with their company's stock price. "We're losing money every day," one man said. "Our investors are getting nervous. We need to figure out what's going wrong." Marcus knew exactly what was wrong. He had been following their company in the financial news for weeks. They had made a bad decision to expand into overseas markets without understanding the local economies. It was the same mistake that many companies had made in the past. "We've hired 3 different consulting firms," another executive said. "They all tell us different things. Nobody seems to understand what's happening." Marcus almost laughed. He could solve their problem in 30 minutes. But they would never ask a homeless man for business advice. As the executives walked away, Marcus felt frustrated. He had valuable knowledge that could help people, but nobody would listen to him because of how he looked and where he lived. That afternoon, Marcus was at the library using the computers when his phone rang. It was an old cell phone that someone had given him at the shelter. It barely worked, but it could receive calls. "Hello?" Marcus answered. "Is this Marcus Thompson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Marcus. This is Jennifer Walsh, Ms. Ashford's assistant. Ms. Ashford would like to meet with you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Can you come to her office?" Marcus's heart started beating faster. "Yes, I can be there." "Great, the address is 1500 Ashford Tower, 40th floor. Just tell security that you have an appointment with Ms. Ashford." After Jennifer hung up, Marcus sat staring at his phone. Victoria Ashford wanted to meet with him personally. This had to mean good news, right? The next day, Marcus put on his best clothes again and walked to Ashford Tower. It was even taller and fancier than the hotel where the auditions had been held. The lobby had gold decorations and marble floors that reflected the lights like mirrors. Marcus told the security guard that he had an appointment with Ms. Ashford. The guard looked at him suspiciously, just like the hotel doorman had. But after making a phone call, the guard gave Marcus a visitor's badge and told him to take the express elevator to the 40th floor. The elevator ride seemed to take forever. Marcus watched the numbers go up, 10, 20, 30, 40. When the doors opened, he was in a reception area that was bigger than most people's entire apartments. The walls were covered with expensive art, and there were huge windows that showed the whole city below. "Mr. Thompson," a young woman approached him. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Ms. Ashford is waiting for you in her office." Jennifer led Marcus down a long hallway, lined with photographs of all the buildings that Ashford Industries had constructed over the years. Finally, they reached a set of double doors made of dark wood. "Ms. Ashford," Jennifer said as she opened the doors. "Mr. Thompson is here." Victoria Ashford's office was the most impressive room Marcus had ever seen. One entire wall was made of windows that looked out over the city. There was a conference table that could seat 20 people, and a desk that was bigger than the beds in the homeless shelter. Victoria stood up from behind her desk and walked over to shake Marcus's hand. She was wearing another expensive business suit, but she seemed more relaxed than she had been at the audition. "Please sit down," Victoria said, pointing to 2 comfortable chairs near the windows. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be great," Marcus said. His mouth was dry from nervousness. Victoria called Jennifer to bring water, then sat down across from Marcus. "I have to tell you, Mr. Thompson, your audition was very impressive. But I asked you here because I want to understand something better." "What's that?" Marcus asked. "You mentioned that you used to be a financial analyst," Victoria said. "I did some research after your audition. I found records of a Marcus Thompson who worked at Preston & Associates 5 years ago. The same Marcus Thompson who advised my company on a major investment deal." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had not expected Victoria to investigate his background. "That was me," Marcus said quietly. Victoria leaned forward in her chair. You made my company $50 million on that deal. You predicted that the renewable energy market would explode just before it actually did. Your analysis was brilliant. Marcus nodded. I remember that deal. Your company wanted to invest in solar panel manufacturing. Most analysts thought it was too risky. But you didn't, Victoria said. You saw something that nobody else saw. You understood that government policies were about to change in ways that would make renewable energy much more profitable. It wasn't that hard to predict, Marcus said. You just had to pay attention to what politicians were actually saying instead of what the news media was reporting. Victoria stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the city for a moment before turning back to Marcus. I have a question for you, she said. If you were such a successful analyst, how did you end up homeless? I mean, I know you told us about losing your family, and I'm very sorry for your loss. But how does someone go from making millions for clients to living on the streets? Marcus took a deep breath. This was the part of his story that he found hardest to talk about. After my wife and daughter died, I couldn't think about anything else. Marcus began. I stopped going to work. I stopped caring about money or success or anything that had seemed important before. My boss was understanding at first, but eventually they had to let me go. Victoria sat back down and listened carefully. I had some savings, but not as much as people might think. Marcus continued. I had been putting most of my money into my daughter's college fund and paying for a big house that my wife wanted. When I lost my job, I couldn't afford the mortgage payments. What about other job opportunities? Victoria asked. With your track record, other companies must have wanted to hire you. Marcus shook his head. I tried for a while, but I was a mess. I would go to interviews and start crying when they asked about my previous work. I was drinking too much. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Nobody wants to hire a financial analyst who can't control his emotions. So you lost your house, Victoria said. I lost everything, Marcus said. I tried to start my own consulting business with the last of my money. I thought I could work for myself, set my own schedule, take time to grieve properly, but I made some bad investment decisions. The market crashed at exactly the wrong time. I lost everything I had left. Victoria was quiet for a moment. That must have been devastating. The worst part wasn't losing the money, Marcus said. The worst part was losing my identity. I had defined myself by my success. When that was gone, I didn't know who I was anymore. But you're still the same person, Victoria said. You still have the same brain, the same knowledge, the same skills. That's what I've been trying to tell people for 3 years, Marcus said. But nobody listens to homeless people. They think if you're living on the streets, you must be stupid or lazy or crazy. They don't understand that anyone can become homeless if enough bad things happen at once. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. You know, I've been thinking about what you said at the audition, about our job training program. You were right. It was designed by people who understand business but not homelessness. Most charity programs are like that, Marcus said. They're designed to make the donors feel good, not to actually solve problems. What would really work? Victoria asked. Marcus felt excited. This was the first time in years that someone with power and money was asking for his ideas. You have to understand that being homeless is not just about not having a house, Marcus explained. It's about losing everything that makes you feel human. You lose your dignity, your confidence, your sense of purpose. Any program that really wants to help has to address all of those things, not just the practical needs. Give me an example, Victoria said. Take job training, Marcus said. Most programs teach people basic skills like how to use a computer or how to fill out applications. But they don't teach people how to believe in themselves again. They don't help people remember that they have value and potential. Marcus was getting more animated as he talked. This was what he was good at, analyzing problems and finding solutions. The best program would start by treating people like they already have something valuable to offer, Marcus continued. Instead of just teaching people to follow instructions, it would ask them to share their knowledge and experience. It would help them rebuild their confidence by showing them that they can still contribute something meaningful. Victoria was taking notes now. That's a completely different approach from what we've been doing. It's also cheaper and more effective, Marcus said. When people feel valuable and confident, they're much more likely to succeed in finding and keeping jobs. They talked for another hour. Marcus shared ideas about housing. The night of the gala, Marcus stood in the bathroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel looking at himself in the mirror. Victoria had arranged for him to get a haircut and buy a proper suit. For the first time in 3 years, He looked like the successful businessman he used to be. But Marcus was more nervous than he had ever been in his life. In 30 minutes, he would walk onto a stage in front of 500 of the richest and most powerful people in the country. These were people who could change laws, start companies, and move billions of dollars with a single decision. Marcus's hands were shaking as he adjusted his tie. He had given hundreds of presentations before, but never anything like this. This was not about analyzing a company or recommending an investment. This was about changing how people thought about homeless people and poverty. There was a knock on the bathroom door. "Mr. Thompson?" It was Jennifer, Victoria's assistant. "Ms. Ashford would like to see you before you go on stage." Marcus took one last look in the mirror and walked out of the bathroom. Jennifer led him to a small room behind the main ballroom where Victoria was waiting. "How are you feeling?" Victoria asked. "Terrified," Marcus said honestly. Victoria smiled. "Good. That means you care about what you're going to say. I've seen your speech notes and they're excellent. Just remember, these people need to hear what you have to say. They need to understand what you've learned," Marcus nodded. Through the walls he could hear the sounds of hundreds of people talking and laughing in the ballroom. The dinner portion of the evening was almost over, which meant it was almost time for his speech. "There's something I want you to know," Victoria said. "I've been thinking about our conversation in my office. I've decided to completely change how my foundation works. Instead of just giving money to programs designed by other wealthy people, I want to include people who have actually experienced poverty and homelessness in designing solutions." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "That could make a real difference." "I hope so," Victoria said. "And I want you to help lead that effort. After tonight, assuming your speech goes well, I'd like to offer you a job. A real job, with a real salary, working to redesign how we approach charity and social services." Marcus felt tears in his eyes. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Victoria said. "You have knowledge and insights that people like me desperately need. You understand both the business world and the world of poverty. That combination is incredibly valuable." Before Marcus could respond, Jennifer appeared in the doorway. "It's time," she said. Victoria squeezed Marcus's shoulder. "You're going to do great. Just tell them the truth." Marcus walked through a hallway that led to the side of the stage. He could see into the ballroom now. It was enormous, with crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and round tables covered with white tablecloths. Every seat was filled with people in expensive clothes. Marcus recognized many faces from the research he had done. There was James Morrison, the venture capitalist who had made millions from Marcus's advice years ago. There was Sarah Chen, the tech CEO whose company Marcus had analyzed. There were politicians, movie stars, and business leaders whose names appeared in newspapers every day. The current speaker was finishing his presentation about education reform. The audience was politely clapping, but Marcus could tell they were not really engaged. They had heard similar speeches many times before. Then Victoria walked onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the microphone, "our final speaker tonight is someone very special. His name is Marcus Thompson, and he has a unique perspective on the economic issues we've been discussing this evening." Marcus heard some murmuring from the audience. They were probably wondering who he was and why they had never heard of him. "Marcus has lived on both sides of the economic divide," Victoria continued. "He understands wealth and poverty, success and failure, in ways that most of us never will. Please welcome Marcus Thompson." The audience applauded politely as Marcus walked onto the stage. He could see hundreds of faces looking up at him, most of them curious but skeptical. These people were used to hearing from famous speakers and expert panelists, not from homeless men in borrowed suits. Marcus stood behind the podium and looked out at the audience. For a moment he felt overwhelmed by the size of the crowd and the importance of the moment. Then he remembered what Victoria had said. Just tell them the truth. "Good evening," Marcus began. His voice was clear and strong, carried by the microphone to every corner of the room. "My name is Marcus Thompson. 5 years ago I was in this room as a guest at a similar event. I was wearing an expensive tuxedo, and I had just made my clients several $1,000,000 in a single day." The audience was paying attention now. Marcus could see surprise and curiosity on their faces. 3 years ago I was sleeping in an alley 6 blocks from here," Marcus continued. "I was dirty, hungry, and invisible to people like you. The only difference between 5 years ago and 3 years ago was a series of tragic events that can happen to anyone. Marcus paused and looked around the room. He could see that he had their complete attention now. "I lost my wife and 8-year-old daughter in a car accident," Marcus said. "The grief was so overwhelming that I stopped being able to function. I lost my job, my home, and eventually everything I owned. For the past 3 years, I have been homeless." The room was completely silent now. Marcus could see shock and discomfort on many faces. These people were not used to hearing about such personal tragedies at their charity dinners. "But here's what I want you to understand," Marcus continued. "Being homeless did not make me stupid. It did not erase my education, my experience, or my ability to analyze complex problems. What it did was give me a perspective that none of you have." Marcus clicked a button and a slide appeared on the large screen behind him. It showed a graph of income inequality in the United States. "You all know these statistics," Marcus said. "The gap between rich and poor is wider than it has been in 100 years. What you might not know is that the policies designed to address this problem are often created by people who have never experienced poverty themselves." Another slide appeared, showing data about homelessness and unemployment. "Every day, I sit outside office buildings and listen to business leaders discussing economic policy," Marcus said. "I hear them making decisions that affect millions of poor people. But they have never been poor themselves. They create solutions based on theories and assumptions, not on real experience." Marcus could see some people in the audience shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. He was challenging their assumptions about themselves and their work. "Let me give you a specific example," Marcus continued. 6 months ago, a major foundation announced a new program to help homeless people find jobs. The program required applicants to have a permanent address. But here's the problem. Most homeless people cannot get a permanent address without a job, and they cannot get a job without an address. The program was designed by well-meaning people who did not understand the reality of homelessness. Marcus clicked to the next slide, which showed his own proposal for addressing unemployment among homeless people. "What would work better?" Marcus asked. "A program that provides temporary housing first, then job training, then employment placement. A program that treats homeless people as valuable individuals with skills and potential, not as charity cases who need to be fixed." The audience was listening intently now. Marcus could see people taking notes and whispering to each other. "I've spent 3 years learning about poverty from the inside," Marcus said. "I've learned which government programs actually work and which ones just waste money. I've learned what poor people really need versus what wealthy people think they need." Marcus told them about the business executives he had watched make the same economic mistakes over and over again. He explained how his understanding of both wealth and poverty had given him insights that could benefit everyone. "The solutions to our economic problems are not just about giving money to poor people," Marcus said. "They're about creating systems that benefit everyone. Systems that give poor people opportunities to contribute their skills and knowledge. Systems that help wealthy people make better decisions by understanding the real impact of their choices." Marcus presented his comprehensive plan for addressing economic inequality. It included ideas for job creation, housing policy, education reform, and business development. But unlike most such plans, Marcus's ideas were based on his experience of living in both worlds. The homeless man you step over on your way to work might be a former engineer who could help design better infrastructure, Marcus said. The woman asking for change outside your office building might be a former teacher who understands education better than most policy experts. Marcus could see that his words were having an impact. Some people in the audience looked ashamed. Others looked thoughtful and engaged. "I'm not asking for your pity," Marcus continued. "I'm offering you something valuable. I'm offering you knowledge and perspective that you cannot get from books or reports or consulting firms. I'm offering you the insights of someone who has lived on both sides of the economic divide." Marcus clicked to his final slide, which showed a photo of himself from 5 years ago, standing next to a photo of himself from 6 months ago when he was still living on. The standing ovation lasted for 3 minutes, but to Marcus it felt like an hour. As the applause finally died down and people began to sit back in their chairs, Marcus could see that something had changed in the room. The polite, distant expressions that wealthy people usually wore at charity events had been replaced with genuine interest and emotion. Marcus stepped back from the podium, not sure what to do next. He had given his speech, but nobody had told him what happened after that. Victoria had mentioned that there would be time for people to ask questions, but Marcus had not expected the response to be so strong. Victoria walked back onto the stage and stood next to Marcus. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the microphone, "I think we can all agree that was an extraordinary presentation. Mr. Thompson has agreed to take a few questions." Immediately, hands shot up all around the room. Marcus felt nervous again. It was one thing to give a prepared speech, but answering questions from some of the smartest and most powerful people in the world was different. Victoria pointed to a man in the front row. Marcus recognized him as James Morrison, the venture capitalist who had made millions from Marcus's investment advice years ago. James stood up. "Mr. Thompson, first I want to say that your presentation was remarkable. I have a question about your economic model. You mentioned creating systems that benefit both wealthy and poor people. Can you give us a specific example of what that might look like?" Marcus felt more confident now. This was the kind of question he knew how to answer. "Absolutely," Marcus said. "Let's talk about affordable housing. Right now, most affordable housing is built by non-profit organizations using government money. The housing is cheap to build but expensive to maintain. It creates neighborhoods that are poor and stay poor." Marcus had the attention of the entire room. "But what if we created a different model?" Marcus continued. "What if wealthy investors could make a profit by building mixed-income communities? Communities where poor people, middle-class people, and wealthy people all live together?" Marcus explained his idea in detail. Investors would get tax breaks and guaranteed returns. Poor people would get access to good housing and better neighborhoods. Middle-class and wealthy people would get affordable options in desirable locations. Everyone would benefit. James was nodding as Marcus spoke. "That's brilliant," he said. "It treats poverty as an economic problem with economic solutions, not just a social problem that needs charity." The next question came from Sarah Chen, the tech CEO. "Mr. Thompson, you mentioned that homeless people often have valuable skills and knowledge that are being wasted. How do we identify and utilize those skills?" Marcus smiled. This was exactly the kind of thinking he had been hoping to inspire. "Start by asking," Marcus said. "Most programs for homeless people focus on what's wrong with them. What they need to learn, what they need to fix, what they need to change. But nobody asks what they already know, what they're good at, what they can contribute." Marcus told them about Tom, a homeless man he knew who had been a master electrician before he became disabled and lost his job. Tom could not do physical electrical work anymore, but he could teach other people. He could design electrical systems. He could solve complex problems that stumped younger electricians. "But Tom has been homeless for 10 years, Marcus said. "Nobody has ever asked him about his skills or experience. They just see a homeless man who needs help, not a skilled professional who could help others." Sarah was taking notes. "What if we created a database of skills and experience among homeless people? What if we matched them with volunteer opportunities or part-time work that use their expertise?" "Exactly," Marcus said. "And don't just limit it to traditional job skills. Some homeless people are amazing at understanding bureaucracy, because they've had to navigate so many government programs. Some are experts at stretching a dollar because they've had to survive on almost nothing. These are valuable skills that could help businesses and organizations." More hands went up around the room. A woman Marcus did not recognize stood up. "Mr. Thompson, your story is very moving, but I have to ask, what about homeless people who do have addiction problems or mental health issues? How do we help them while also recognizing their potential?" This was a harder question, but Marcus had thought about it a lot during his 3 years on the streets. "First, understand that addiction and mental health problems are often the result of trauma and despair, not the cause of homelessness," Marcus said. "When you lose everything and feel hopeless, substances can seem like the only way to cope with the pain." Marcus explained that traditional treatment programs often failed because they focused on stopping the addiction without addressing the underlying problems that caused it. "But what if we flipped that approach?" Marcus asked. "What if we started by helping people feel valuable and hopeful again? What if we gave them meaningful work and a sense of purpose? In many cases, the addiction problems would start to solve themselves." Marcus told them about Maria, a homeless woman he knew who had been addicted to alcohol for years. When a community organization asked her to help run their food distribution program, she stopped drinking almost immediately. Having responsibility and purpose gave her a reason to stay sober. The questions continued for another 30 minutes. Marcus answered each one with confidence and detailed knowledge. He could see that the audience was not just being polite anymore. They were genuinely interested in his ideas and wanted to learn from his experience. Finally, Victoria thanked Marcus and invited people to continue the conversation during the reception that would follow the formal program. As Marcus walked off the stage, he felt overwhelmed by what had just happened. The reception was held in an adjoining room that was almost as large as the main ballroom. As soon as Marcus entered, he was surrounded by people who wanted to talk to him. But these were not the usual charity event conversations where wealthy people made small talk with the people they were trying to help. These were serious business discussions. James Morrison was the first to approach him. "Marcus," he said, "I want to invest in your housing model. How much money would we need to start a pilot program?" Marcus felt dizzy. "You're serious?" "Completely serious," James said. "I've been looking for investment opportunities that could make money while also solving social problems. Your idea is exactly what I've been searching for." Before Marcus could respond, Sarah Chen joined the conversation. "I'm interested too," she said, "but I'm thinking about the technology side. What if we created an app that could match homeless people's skills with volunteer opportunities and part-time work? We could start with a pilot program in this city and then expand nationally." Marcus found himself in the middle of a business discussion unlike any he had experienced even when he was a successful analyst. These people were not just talking about helping homeless people. They were talking about creating new business models that would be profitable while also solving social problems. More people joined the conversation. A real estate developer wanted to partner with James on the housing project. A tech entrepreneur wanted to work with Sarah on the skills matching app. A foundation director wanted to fund research into Marcus's other ideas. Victoria appeared at Marcus's side. "How are you doing?" she asked quietly. "I can't believe this is really happening," Marcus said. "Believe it," Victoria said. "You've just changed how some of the most influential people in the world think about poverty and homelessness. They're not just inspired by your story, they're excited about your ideas." As the evening continued, Marcus found himself exchanging business cards and phone numbers with people he had only read about in newspapers. They were not treating him like a charity case or an inspiring story. They were treating him like a business partner and consultant. The most surprising moment came when a woman approached him near the end of the evening. She was older, maybe 65, and was wearing jewelry that probably cost more than most people made in a year. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "my name is Margaret Whitfield. I own several companies and I sit on the boards of several foundations." Marcus recognized the name. Margaret Whitfield was one of the richest women in the country. "I want to apologize to you," Margaret continued. "6 months ago I walked past you on the street outside the Meridian building. You asked me for spare change and I ignored you. I actually stepped around you like you were not even human." Marcus remembered the incident. It had hurt more than usual because Margaret had looked directly at him before turning away. "I had no idea who you were or what you had to offer," Margaret said. "I saw a homeless man, and I made assumptions about your intelligence, your worth, your potential. I was completely wrong, and I'm ashamed of my behavior." Marcus did not know what to say. He had dreamed of moments like this when the people who had ignored him would realize their mistake. But now that it was actually happening, he felt more sad than triumphant. "You don't need to apologize," Marcus said. "You're not a bad person. You just didn't know any better. Most people don't." "But that's exactly the problem," Margaret said. "I should have known better, and now I want to do something about it." Margaret explained that she was starting a new foundation specifically focused on identifying and supporting talented people who had become. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his new office on the 20th floor of the Ashford Tower. Through the large windows, he could see the street corner where he used to sit with his guitar case asking for spare change. The view was different from up here, but Marcus made sure he never forgot what it looked like from down there. The nameplate on his door read, "Marcus Thompson, Director of Inclusive Economic Development." It was a title that had never existed before, because no one had ever thought to hire someone who understood both wealth and poverty to bridge the gap between them. Marcus's office was comfortable but not fancy. He had insisted on keeping it simple. The most important thing in the room was not the expensive desk or the leather chairs, but the wall covered with photographs and success stories from the programs he had helped create. There was a picture of Tom, the former electrician, teaching a class at the new job training center that James Morrison had funded. Tom was no longer homeless. He had his own apartment and was earning money by sharing his knowledge with younger people who wanted to learn electrical work. Next to Tom's picture was a photo of Maria, who had been promoted to manager of the city's largest food distribution program. Her experience as a homeless person had taught her exactly what hungry people needed and how to run an efficient operation. The program was now serving twice as many people while spending less money. Marcus looked at his watch. It was almost time for his weekly meeting with Victoria Ashford. These meetings had become the highlight of Marcus's week. Victoria had become not just his boss but his partner in trying to change how the world dealt with poverty and homelessness. There was a knock on Marcus's door. "Come in," he called. It was Jennifer, Victoria's assistant, but she looked different now. 6 months ago, she had been nervous about inviting homeless people to the charity gala. Now she worked closely with Marcus to identify and support talented people who were living on the streets. "Marcus," Jennifer said, "Ms. Ashford is ready for your meeting, and I have good news. The City Council just approved funding for 3 more job training centers based on your model." Marcus smiled. "That's fantastic. How many people will that help?" "Over 1,000 people each year," Jennifer said. "And the best part is that the programs will be designed and run by people who have actually been homeless themselves." Marcus walked down the hall to Victoria's office. As he passed other offices, he saw people he had recommended for jobs. There was David, a former homeless man who had become an expert in government bureaucracy during his years of trying to get services. Now he worked as a consultant, helping businesses understand and navigate complex regulations. In another office was Susan, a woman who had been homeless for 5 years after losing her job as a computer programmer. Marcus had connected her with Sarah Chen's tech company, where she was now developing the app that matched homeless people's skills with work opportunities. "Marcus," Victoria called as he entered her office. "Perfect timing. I just got off the phone with Margaret Whitfield. The pilot program in Chicago is exceeding all expectations." Marcus sat down in his usual chair across from Victoria's desk. The Chicago program was one of his proudest achievements. Margaret Whitfield had funded a comprehensive approach that included housing, job training, mental health services, and business development, all designed with input from people who had experienced homelessness. "How many people have found permanent housing?" Marcus asked. 87% of participants, Victoria said, and 63% have found full-time employment. But the most amazing statistic is that 92% of participants say they feel valued and hopeful about their future. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. Those numbers represented real people whose lives had changed completely. People who had been invisible and forgotten were now contributing members of their communities. "There's something else," Victoria continued. "The mayor of Los Angeles wants to implement our model citywide, and we've had inquiries from mayors in 12 other cities." Marcus could hardly believe how quickly things were changing. 6 months ago, he had been one homeless man with ideas that no one would listen to. Now those ideas were being implemented in cities across the country. "I have news too," Marcus said. "Remember the housing project that James Morrison invested in? The first building is ready for occupancy. We have apartments for 50 families, including 10 families who were previously homeless." The mixed-income housing project had been even more successful than Marcus had predicted. Wealthy residents appreciated the affordable rent and convenient location. Middle-class residents liked the community atmosphere and the opportunity to be part of a social change project. And formerly homeless residents were thriving in an environment where they were treated as valued neighbors, not charity cases. "James wants to build 10 more buildings like it," Marcus continued. "He says it's the most profitable investment he's made in years, and it's also the one he's most proud of." Victoria leaned back in her chair and smiled. "You know what this means, don't you? We're not just helping individual homeless people anymore. We're changing entire systems. We're proving that including marginalized people in decision-making doesn't just help them. It makes everything work better for everyone." Marcus nodded. That was always the goal, to show that poverty isn't just a social problem that needs charity. It's an economic problem that needs smart solutions. They spent the next hour reviewing reports from programs in different cities. Every report told the same story. When homeless people were treated as partners rather than problems, when their knowledge and skills were valued rather than ignored, when they were included in designing solutions rather than just receiving services, everything worked better. After the meeting, Marcus walked back to his office to prepare for his afternoon appointments. He was meeting with a group of formerly homeless people who wanted to start their own business. Then he had a call with a foundation that wanted to fund a new research project. Finally, he was having dinner with a group of CEOs who wanted advice on how to hire people who had been homeless. As Marcus worked at his desk, he thought about how much his life had changed. He had an apartment now, a nice one with a view of the park where he used to sleep sometimes. He had money in the bank and a secure job. He could afford to eat at the same restaurants where he used to ask for leftover food. But the most important change was not the material improvements. The most important change was that Marcus felt valuable again. He felt like his knowledge and experience mattered. He felt like he was making a difference in the world. There was another knock on his door. This time it was Roberto, the security guard from the Meridian Financial Group building. Marcus had hired him as a community outreach coordinator because Roberto understood how to treat homeless people with dignity and respect. "Marcus," Roberto said, "I just wanted to update you on the mentor program. We now have 50 business professionals who are meeting regularly with homeless people to share skills and knowledge, and 15 of those homeless people have found jobs through connections they made with their mentors." Marcus smiled. The mentor program had been one of his first ideas after starting his new job. Instead of just giving money to homeless people, wealthy professionals were sharing their time and expertise. The results had been remarkable for both groups. "The best part," Roberto continued, "is that the business professionals are learning as much as they're teaching. One CEO told me that his homeless mentor taught him more about customer service in one conversation than he had learned in 10 years of business school." As Roberto left, Marcus looked out his window again at the street corner where he used to sit. There was a new group of homeless people there now. Marcus made a mental note to go down and talk to them tomorrow. He wanted to learn about their skills and experience. He wanted to understand what they needed and what they could contribute. Marcus knew that his story was unusual. Most homeless people would never get the opportunities he had received. But that was exactly why his work was so important. He was using his success to create opportunities for others. He was proving that homelessness was not about personal failure, but about circumstances that could be changed. Marcus's phone rang. It was his assistant. "Mr. Thompson, I have the mayor's office on the line. They want to discuss expanding the job training program to include suburban areas." As Marcus took the call, he thought about his wife Sarah and his daughter Emma. He knew they would be proud of what he was doing. He was taking the tragedy of losing them and turning it into something that helped other people. He was using his pain to create hope. After the call, Marcus packed up his briefcase and prepared to leave for the day. As he walked through the building lobby, he nodded to the security guard and smiled at the cleaning crew. He knew some of their stories now. He knew that the woman mopping the floors had a college degree but could not find work in her field because of language barriers. He knew that the man emptying trash cans was supporting 3 children on minimum wage. Marcus had learned that there were invisible people everywhere, not just on the streets. There were people whose talents and potential were being wasted because of assumptions about their background, their education, or their circumstances.